16. Don't imagine that I originated federal suits for survival, not murder government. On every continent, citizens are pressing and winning, in Indonesia, for example, claims for better environmental protection. So get busy, spread the message and my speech, and your speeches, and file those lawsuits. 100% of the measures that I propose must fast become your treaty, federal court and legislature laws forcing every president, governor, and mayor to execute them. Extinction rockets and laughs at, pretty please, unless you don't wanna. Legalized bribery of politicians. Private cash to leaders for often murderous, not beneficial public acts, not only built our 8 billion earthlings dooming nuclear arsenal and drove America's 50% arming of 220 wars, killing 14 million souls, it also pulled the trigger of every assault gun slaughter of children, worshipers, and shoppers since death merchant billions into federal legislator campaign kitties forced re-legalization of military slaughter assault weapons. 30 million at last count for selling to millions of undiagnosed but still often mentally ill teenage boys. 100% of the most fully bribed American Senate political party will never vote for universal background checks or against any of the hundreds of new rifle models designed solely to murder dozens of civilian innocents faster than even a 4-minute police arrival and counterattack. Exactly as accomplished thousands of times in the single nation with 420 million guns, jacking us dozens of times above the world's per capita murder and suicide rate. A vast plurality of citizens beg our leaders to switch legislating slaughter to life-saving. But the few who do quickly face new guns galore candidates funded with thousands of war weapon propaganda TV spots written by the gun sellers. Only when private gifts to politicians go from unlimited to totally outlawed will we replace special interest oligarchy, tyranny, and military dictatorship with all equal citizen democracy. Despite the bribery propaganda billions in TV ads for both world and neighborhood war, a 90% majority of Americans today advocate gun buyer background checks without the private and gun show sales loopholes 100% designed to explode murder incorporated growth. 70% also demand that all assault guns of mass destruction remain in military armories only. The vast majority of far less corrupted governments enforce these exact peace and survival laws. My entire speech only begs you to fight for survival conditions for all 8 billion. No other way to keep your 8-year-old girl glowing and growing, right? But why would you join our world rescue only to leave in power men and women utterly corrupted to only legislate blowing your little girl to bloody shreds under her desk like the dozens in Uvalde, Texas, who called 911 seconds before eating 140 high-powered military bullets? You've heard my agonized speech about the end of our world. What is the one thing 1,000 times worse than extinction? Your child's death while you survive only to grieve and suffer until yours. You have a brain, a heart, and ethics of right stopping wrong. You just never had a plan of action. Now you do. understand the murder and mayhem for profit players. They are much more helplessly coerced and corrupted than evil, and every bribing weapon and pollution seller is simply tempted and hungry for legal profits, for lavish family support and power. So who, then, would keep cementing our world's worst, most terminal tragedies and fully effective, if not deliberate evils? Wouldn't that be you and I who, even after desiring and plotting our rescue, remain good men and women who still do nothing? My good speech, my 60-year obsession dies with all of us if I rest on bullshit laurels and don't get it out to damn near everybody, right? You and I act now. Never stop. We're gonna win life, win love, win our world. Then, only then, can we live long, prosper, and be happy with our truly loved ones. My talk's end is our beginning. How are we gonna make our family love government law? Exactly how we care, morning to night, for our every young and old loved one, with relentless, smart, joyous action. On July 5th, 2022, National Public Radio interviewed a Washington Post reporter who discussed his story about a Somali mother of 5 who led her children from their village home to a distant aid encampment that she hoped would provide the food long unavailable where they lived. Sadly, her littlest girl was too emaciated and weak to walk, and soon died. This grieving family still had to flee to save her other starving children. They made it to the camp and were provided water. But the hungry hordes were less than subsisting on mere mouthfuls of daily rice. The reporter surveyed our crisis-ridden world to detail the perfect storm of environmental and human disasters which not only killed that little girl, but promised to diminish 2021's record 8 million starvation deaths to a modest little problem soon eclipsed by the skyrocketing horror upon us soon. Somalia's water and crop vanishing drought is but one awful example among scores of nations on 6 continents suffering abnormally low rainfall from excess CO2-induced warming 24 years straight, producing ever more fatal world thirst and hunger. Russia's monstrous attack on Ukraine includes a total port blockade of wheat exports, which had for decades fed much of Africa and all of Somalia. International oil sanctions against Putin's aggression multiplied world energy prices until many poorer nations' transportation of essential food, water, and commerce could no longer sufficiently afford to gas up and roll. COVID crashed economies drastically cut charity support of private relief organizations, slashing hunger aid worldwide. The UN begs for $1.5 billion to buy and deliver food to the entire starving nation of Somalia. But so far, 193 members have coughed up only 18% of the life-saving funds that would total under 1,000th of Inhumanity's annual military murder investment. He ended the interview, as do most all bad news bearers, without proposing any rescue program. I nearly ended your speech before adding our final national and international laws that every you must fight for if you're serious about saving your own family. due to be killed by the very same horrors soon to storm into your not for long rich and powerful nations too. Even America's breadbasket is fast dying, just like farms everywhere. The correspondent's last report noted that Somalia's chronic civil war, fueled by the international weapons business that our treaty would outlaw, further ruined leaders' feeble attempts to replenish their population's food and water. Always everyone's 365-day lifeblood, who somehow dodges every bullet and bomb. Are you as sick and angry as I am, hearing nothing but passive, impotent whining about man's inhumanity to and destruction of man? Just not a single word about any new lawful rescues that you and I must now obviously demand from every voter and financial, legal, and political power player alive. Well, please listen up and act out now, or just never again look at a single doomed like all child in the eye while you sit back down in silence for the short, deadly duration. First, we are bound to fail and die, never to boom our political rescue movement, if corrupt, unconstitutional schemers worldwide gerrymander, legislate, and regulate endless triumph of power minorities, deliberately crushing most of the majority's needs and actual votes. So we must all then, in every letter, state and national bill, court lawsuit, and swords into plowshares treaty tenant demand lawful, enforced, one person, one full, easy vote democracy. It ain't complicated. Just destroy every single bad guy's anti-voter law that deliberately engineers tyranny. Newsflash! Concerning all those private schemes between every industrial donor and their massively paid politician pawns, our fly on the wall buzzed in with a mini recorder. Now remember that we're going to have to win a bunch of suits and elections before all such bribery is totally banished. Smoke-filled room, roll tape 1. Senator, if you want multi-millions or one more damn nickel from us, never allow passage or even proposal of any law requiring independent career professionals, no more appointed partisan hacks, to run elections. Don't vote on, just table any legislation to bind election officials to simple full democracy safeguards, like prohibiting us conspirators from removing 90% of the polling places from low socioeconomic, high population urban neighborhoods that we know, when sufficiently abused, would vote, if fully constitutionally allowed, their out-of-power political party back in. So this denial, then, is exactly how we really crush those not prosperous or powerful inferior races and wrong religion believers, not fair political opponents with our rights and privileges, just enemies to permanently defeat. To all state and national legislators, the elite's power donors instruct. Pass hundreds of laws slashing the exactly targeted voting power of our opponent citizens who merely cry for the stupid rebels' will of the people. The 60% for reproductive rights, 70% wanting to outlaw assault guns, and 90% demanding universal background checks before gun purchasers must never gain their majority rule, For this would topple us minority oligarchs from our thrones, right? Senator never outlawed gerrymandering of most congressional districts to insert a modest but victorious 55% of our party's minority of voters in each, while packing most of our opposing majority populations into a few slick 80% plurality districts, nicely shrinking their legislature's representation to hilarious impotence. And you state politicians pressure your 30 partisan secretaries of state to purge millions of wrong party voters from the rolls with targeted, overregulated bullshit. Oh, and eliminate wherever possible early, weekend, and mail-in voting, vitally needed by poor, high work-hour voters that we know favor the hapless majority party, that we can thus keep neutering until we fully nail down one-party dictatorship. Now do publicly extol equal opportunities, American dream, ideal, and law with every lie you can fabricate. But between us players, democracy is merely the huge weenie rebels losing proposition. As soon as you play back our Superfly's secret gotcha tape, review history since patriarchs launched war. Crushing majority needs and votes precisely defines 10,000 years of unconstitutional, evil tyranny. My friends, the perpetrators will keep smashing us and themselves a handful of years to doomsday unless we fast, fully, legally, and physically dismantle their powerful, evil machinery. Start with court challenges and write bills for your legislators to hammer exact opposites of the many players' new laws that now allow partisan state legislatures to declare their presidential opponent's last landslide fraudulent and to permit their refusal to certify elections proven, recounted, and court declared to be clean and accurate, and legalize fake electors' power to declare their losing candidate the state's 100% presidential winner. A single corrupt leader launched those now being tyrannically forced legal nuclear missiles to perpetuate his big lies for overturning all future elections, merely initially defeating the self-appointed ones. Now you and I must legally shoot them down forever, or your little girl will soon parch, starve, and explode or freeze. The power mongers' "stop the steal" is lying for tyranny. Our "stop the steal" is the truth for constitutional democracy and human survival. Of course, the straightest line to the promised land in America is a constitutional amendment to replace the utterly unrepresentative Electoral College fraud magnet with a simple, every vote fully counts national presidential election. Then all the occasional bad loser schemer could do is phone up the national election director and whine, "Just find me 7 million more votes." Our majority-corrupted modern Supreme Court has long loved and exploded dirty political money and is preparing to sanction those very state legislatures' new presidential election robbery conspiracy laws, incredibly unchallenged by lower judicial constitutional overrule or national legislative reform. So you just keep hammering new laws of democracy through every court and legislature, state and national, until we, the people's majority, elect fully fair, solid legislative majorities everywhere. all demanding and voting for a few more constitutional big black robes to outnumber and outvote the current 6 deliberately appointed to finish democracy's destruction. Good. Now, as soon as we all can, we damn well better vote for candidates who promise to legislate and for executives to execute the very goals of our lawsuits, many of which some courts will temporarily shoot down. Simultaneously, let's make a required tenet of our Swords into Plowshares treaty that all nations' 3 branches of government enforce democracy in such required detail, just to qualify for the treaty. Why? Because no one advances survival and peace while murder for money jackals, those same corrupt 1% kingpins who directed world militarization, slaughter, tyranny, and robbery for the last 10,000 years, stay in charge. And now our time's up. This 71-year-old has more, only if safe, earthly time left than do your terminally terrorized little children. That Somali girl's death, to be repeated billions of times through this next decade of world-ending catastrophe, certain without you on our rescue job, her death must not be in vain. For a hopefully short while, weapons and tyranny could remain to cause more invasions like Alexander Putin's. NATO's and America's proxy war military aid to Ukraine may not succeed. Certainly no United Nations action is intervening in Somalia's civil war, further starving that nation, nor halts Russia's bestial Ukraine bloodbath. Why not? UN Security Council's single aggressor nation veto power renders that august body as powerless to enforce peace as a kitten at a dogfight. So for every world-ending abuse must come more of your family love world law, lack of which probably fried and froze 1 million planets, but damn sure saved some that visited us idiots to wise us up. Certainly, let's try to convert the UN to real peace power by redoing its charter to give a 90% General Assembly plurality, not any impotent Security Council, the power to unleash a world peacekeeping force drawn from a fraction of every member's armed forces, organized and ready to stop any war except nuclear holocaust, for which you and I must fast build the world treaty to flat destroy every nuclear bomb. It is highly unlikely that we'll inspire any true UN peace force and power. So let's simultaneously negotiate our border defenses only treaty that could halt every war with reducing but internationally empowered peace forces until most all invasion and national tyranny excess weaponry is gone. Remember that only this focused treaty, never a sluggish, chaotic, ununited nations, could also explode world atmosphere reduction of deadly CO2 and require coastal nations to fast desalinate water for billions, soon to run fatally low on disappearing rain and snow sources. We're flat out of extra decades to pretty please, friends, enemies, and the useless UN anyway. So only our treaty could fully use every signatory's diminishing swords, specifically air forces, to douse every forest fire and also put out every early war's brush fire. helping to reverse cascading world inflation and food shortages now worsened by the current evil dictator's invasion. There you have it. My latest fat mouth blast is almost done. I might remain weak and useless, so thank God the ball is in your court, the relay sprinter's baton in your hand. You and your family will either lose interest and energy, sit down and die fast, or stand up and smack it, then run like hell for all humanity's survival victory. Identical to and required to save your every loved one and you. Get the picture? And forget good karma and pretty please. Our love, our lives will only be saved with our actions, our laws, and our fight. So, let's get ready to rumble!